2.5 weeks after he left the right-wing extremist AfD, the EU Parliament has withdrawn the parliamentary immunity of the now non-attached MEP and former party leader Jörg Meuthen. MEPs voted in favor of the step with a large majority, as announced in Strasbourg on Tuesday. As a result, nothing formally stands in the way of possible criminal investigations against Meuthen. According to information from the responsible legal committee of the EU Parliament, it is about allegedly false information in the AfD's financial reports. The MEP said he himself voted to have his immunity lifted. In a personal statement, Meuthen added that the repeal would not have been necessary since, as he said it, I had already promised the Berlin public prosecutors full and unconditional willingness to cooperate last spring. He was convinced that all suspicions against him would prove to be unfounded. In the interest of completing the investigations by the public prosecutor as quickly as possible, my full willingness to cooperate, which I have already promised, will of course remain. Well, last year, the Berlin Public Prosecutor's Office filed an application to have Meuthen's immunity lifted. In a proposal by the responsible legal committee of the EU Parliament for the parliamentary decision that has now been made, it is explained that the Public Prosecutor's Office had requested the annulment, among other things, in order to initiate criminal proceedings on suspicion of a violation of the party law. The new CDU leader Friedrich Merz can now also intervene as opposition leader in the Bundestag in the dispute with the so-called traffic light coalition. The union faction elected the 66-year-old as chairman on Tuesday with a large majority. Merz previously held this office from 2000 to 2002. He replaces Ralf Brinkhaus, who decided not to run again. With the bundling of the most important functions with Merz, the CDU is completing its reorganizations after the disaster in the federal elections for the time being. According to information from parliamentary groups, Merz received 162 of 186 votes cast. According to information from the German press agency, there were 19 no votes and 5 abstentions. After the union calculates abstentions, Merz got 89.5% of the votes. The CDU and CSU have a total of 197 MPs, and Merz was elected chairman of the CDU in January. He withdrew from the Bundestag in 2009 to pursue a career in business and only returned to parliament in the 2021 federal elections. Merz called his election an impressive vote of confidence with which the leadership responsibility of the CDU and the union faction is placed in one hand. He said, "We are now in the opposition and we have to formulate our policy clearly and unequivocally from this opposition in a unified and mutually agreed manner. The voters' mandate is to control the government, but also to develop alternatives. If the foreign policy situation deteriorates, the opposition will take a backseat and joint responsibility with the government will come to the fore," assured Merz at the same time. Consumers will have to adjust to higher food prices in the coming months. This is the result of surveys by the IFO Institute. Some supermarkets are already raising prices. Groceries are expected to become significantly more expensive in Germany. According to our surveys, more than 2/3 of food manufacturers are planning further price increases in the coming months, said Timo Wollmershäuser, head of economic activity at the Munich IFO Institute, and he said that to the German newspaper Welt am Sonntag. That's more than ever before in reunified Germany. Thus, food prices are likely to be a key inflation driver this year, he says. The economic researchers have therefore upgraded their forecast for the inflation rate in Germany in 2022 to 4%. According to the report, the institute even expects food prices to increase by 7% compared to the previous year. The background to this is, among other things, sharply rising costs for producers. As the newspaper reported, citing calculations by the German Farmers Association, the jumps in the prices of fertilizers and fuel alone are causing production costs in arable farming to rise by 20 to 30%. Not every farm can or wants to go along with this. Ultimately, consumers would feel this. The price increase in the supermarkets is only just beginning, said the partner at the consulting company EY and agribusiness officer Christian Janze to the newspaper. Producer prices are rising sharply, which ultimately has an impact on consumer prices, especially after the next harvest, he said. A price shock is imminent in his eyes. A small group of climate protection demonstrators spilled a pile of manure in the Federal Ministry of Agriculture in Berlin on Tuesday. At noon, the members of the Uprising of the Last Generation initiative got through a side entrance into an entrance area of the ministry, where they spread manure on a carpet, as a DPA, that's the German press agency photographer, reported. The police were quickly on site in Wilhelmstraße with a large contingent. They spoke of 8 demonstrators, some of whom would have stuck themselves. At the same time, another group of demonstrators protested in the Ministry of Justice. Photos showed food lying on the floor and young people holding banners. According to the police, there were 10 demonstrators. And the initiative wrote, "Dear federal government, your policy in the climate crisis is crap, and that's why you're getting crap with you today." The police initially waited with an evacuation. The 2 ministries initially tolerated the demonstrators and then wanted to agree on a joint approach and inform the police accordingly. Agriculture Minister Cem Özdemir from the Greens said he was glad the demonstrators weren't stopping ambulances but were turning to politics. Step 2 would now be to simply invite us to a conversation, as is customary if we could pull together. The fact that so much food is thrown away is rightly outrageous for many people, and me too, he said. Since the end of January, the group has repeatedly blocked motorway exits, especially in Berlin, but also in Hamburg and Munich. They had also announced actions in Freiburg and Bayreuth for Tuesday. The group is calling for an immediate food-saving law and an agricultural turnaround to reduce greenhouse gases from agriculture. According to a study, the skepticism of the population towards immigration is decreasing, and the opportunities of migration are becoming more important. At the same time, concerns about the negative consequences of immigration have continued to decrease, even if they still exist in the majority. This was the result of a survey commissioned by the Bertelsmann Foundation on the culture of welcome in Germany. It also reveals a clearly increased willingness to take in refugees. In November 2021, Kantar Mnet surveyed a good 2,000 people aged 14 and over. The results made it clear something is moving, as the analysis from Gütersloh published on Wednesday said. Critical considerations and rejection are still present and noticeable. On the opportunity side, with a view to the economy, 68% of those surveyed believe that immigration brings advantages for the settlement of international companies, and 55% that it helps against the shortage of skilled workers. Almost 2/3 expect that society will age less thanks to migration, and 48% expect additional income for the pension pot. All values are higher than previous surveys in 2017 and 2019. Almost every second person with 48% states that more people seeking protection should be taken in for humanitarian reasons, compared to 37% in 2019 and 2017. There are still fears in large part of the population, but they have subsided. Around 2/3 still assume that the welfare state will be burdened and also expect conflicts between immigrants and locals. 56% expect problems in the schools. Housing shortage in metropolitan areas is worried by 59%, in this case unchanged from 2019, but the housing market is really something special at the moment. Opponents of the corona policy protested loudly on Monday evening in front of the residence of the Lord Mayor of Halberstadt in Saxony-Anhalt, Daniel Scharata, from the Christian Democrats. Politicians from various parties condemned the actions of the demonstrators as crossing borders, while Scharata himself described the incident as threatening. The demonstration, with up to 700 participants, which according to the police was mainly led by right-wing extremists, had moved from the city center through neighboring residential and commercial areas with drums and whistles, torches and fireworks, as the Magdeburg Police Inspectorate announced on Tuesday. The group reached Sharata's house around 8 p.m. and stayed there for several minutes with loud protests. Police officers stood in front of the building to protect them. The group broke up around 10 p.m. In the course of the demonstration, the police initiated several investigations into, among other things, assaulting law enforcement officials, and according to the officials, there were no injuries to the police, for good sake. Sharata described the demonstration in front of his apartment building as an attempt to intimidate and scare. He was in the house with his family on Monday evening and found the sceneries threatening, the 39-year-old told the German press agency on Tuesday. However, he felt that the police had the situation well under control. The gathering in front of his house was directed by right-wing extremists from the outside. It wasn't the town of Halberstadt that was on my doorstep, Sharata said. Nevertheless, it makes him sad that something like this is happening in Halberstadt of all places. He hopes that one or the other will recognize afterwards that a red line has been crossed there. And I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.